Victor always thought he had the perfect life, a loving wife, Sophia, and his best friend of 15 years, Darren, who was more like a brother to him. Life was stable, and they had built a comfortable home together over 5 years of marriage. On the surface, everything seemed fine, but cracks he had ignored were about to break everything apart. It all started on an ordinary Saturday evening, one that felt calm and uneventful, until everything changed. Victor had returned home earlier than planned from a work trip. The trip was supposed to keep him out of town for the entire week, but after just one day, he came back feeling under the weather and too exhausted to stay away from home. As soon as he stepped into the familiar warmth of their house, he hoped to find comfort in Sophia's company. Dinner had been quiet but pleasant, with Sophia humming softly as she cooked, and Victor appreciating the simple moments they shared. Now, with the dishes done, Victor wiped down the dining table, trying to keep his mind off the dull ache in his head and chest. Upstairs, he could hear the faint sound of the shower running as Sophia freshened up for the evening. Everything seemed normal, routine even. Then, a buzz broke the quiet, drawing his attention to the corner of the table where Sophia's phone lay. At first, Victor didn't think much of it. Phones buzzed all the time, and Sophia often received messages from her friends or work colleagues. But as he moved closer to the counter, his eyes caught a glimpse of the screen. He didn't intend to snoop. He never had before. Trust had always been the cornerstone of their relationship, and he never doubted her loyalty. Yet, something about the message made him pause. The screen lit up with a preview, and those few words stopped him cold. From Darren, "Can't stop thinking about last time. When can we meet again?" Victor's heart pounded like a drum. For a moment, he thought he had read it wrong. He blinked, hoping the words would disappear or change into something harmless. But they didn't. The message stayed the same, glaring at him like a flashing red warning sign. His hands grew clammy as he picked up the phone, the weight of it suddenly feeling unbearable. Darren, his best friend, had stood by him through thick and thin, even before he met Sophia. They had shared laughs, secrets, and countless memories. Darren was more than a friend. He was like a brother. And yet, here was this casual yet intimate message from Darren to his wife. "What is this?" Victor muttered to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. His fingers trembled as he swiped at the screen, trying to unlock the phone for more context, but it was password protected. The locked screen revealed no further details, but the notification was like a dagger to his chest. It was enough to confirm that something was wrong. His stomach churned as questions flooded his mind. Last time? Last time what? How long has this been going on? Why didn't I notice anything before? Victor's eyes darted toward the stairs, where he could hear the faint hum of Sophia's voice as she sang in the shower. Her carefree tone, the same voice he had adored for years, now felt like a cruel mockery. His mind spins with disbelief and betrayal. Darren wasn't just some acquaintance or stranger. He was family. How could he do this? And Sophia, how could she? Victor placed the phone back on the counter as if it might burn him. He leaned against the edge of the sink, gripping it tightly to steady himself. His mind raced with questions he wasn't ready to ask, let alone hear the answers to. He needed answers, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to hear the truth. Victor waited until Sophia came downstairs. He stood in the middle of the living room, his voice steady but his words cutting like a blade. "Why is Darren sending you messages like this? And when did this relationship start?" Sophia froze at the foot of the stairs, her face draining of color. The cheerful glow she had worn just hours ago was gone, replaced by panic and guilt. Her lips parted, but no words came out at first. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaky and thin. "Victor, it's not what you think," she stammered, her eyes darting between him and the phone. Victor's jaw tightened as anger bubbled beneath the surface. "Then explain it to me," he snapped, his voice rising. "Why is my best friend telling my wife he can't stop thinking about last time? And how long have you two been sneaking around behind my back?" Sophia's hands trembled as she clutched the staircase's rail as if it might support her collapsing composure. She opened her mouth to speak but faltered, her silence only fueling Victor's frustration. He stepped closer, his tone unyielding. I said, "Explain it." Now, her shoulders sagged, and she seemed to shrink under the weight of his piercing glare. "It's not like that," she muttered weakly, her voice barely audible. It was a mistake." Victor laughed, his voice tinged with bitterness. "A mistake? That's all you've got? A mistake? You don't mistakenly exchange messages like this, Sophia. How long has this been going on?" Sophia's defenses crumbled. She took a shaky breath, her eyes glistening with tears. "It's been about a month," she admitted, her voice breaking. Victor felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. A month. A whole month of lies, of betrayal, of deceit. "And," he pressed, his voice cold and sharp, "have you been with him?" Sophia hesitated, her trembling hands covering her face. The silence that followed was deafening, an answer in itself. "It happened twice," she confessed finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I was drunk both times. I wasn't thinking clearly. I'm so sorry." Victor's world came crashing down around him. Twice. His wife, his partner, the woman he had vowed to love and trust, had betrayed him. And not with just anyone, but with Darren, the man he considered a brother. "Drunk?" he repeated, his voice laced with disbelief. "That's your excuse? You were drunk? Both times?" He shook his head, pacing the room as he struggled to contain the wave of anger and heartbreak. "Do you expect me to believe that being drunk justifies this? Twice, Sophia. Twice. What were you thinking?" "I wasn't," she said through her tears, her voice desperate. "I wasn't thinking at all, Victor. Clearly," he interrupted, his voice icy, "because no one who values their marriage, their partner, their vows, would make this kind of mistake. Twice? What do you even mean by that? Were you drunk every day for a month? Or was this just convenient for you?" Sophia sobbed harder, her words barely intelligible now. But Victor wasn't looking for answers anymore. He wasn't sure there were any that could make this right. All he could think about was the life they had built together, now tainted by her actions and her lazy excuse. He couldn't make sense of it, couldn't comprehend how someone he had trusted so deeply could shatter his world so thoroughly. Victor didn't sleep that night. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. He searched through the years they had spent together, desperately trying to find the clues he had missed. How could he have been so blind? He thought about Sophia's frequent late-night work calls. At the time, he had trusted her completely, brushing off his fleeting concerns. "She's busy," he'd tell himself. "She's just dedicated to her job." But now, those calls felt suspicious. Why did she always step into another room to take them? Why did her voice drop into hushed tones whenever he walked by? Then there was Darren, his best friend, who had always been a constant presence in their lives. Victor realized now how often Darren visited their home, even when Victor wasn't around. He remembered coming home early one afternoon and finding Darren sitting on their couch, laughing with Sophia like they were the best of friends. "You're here again," Victor had joked, feeling no reason to worry at the time. But now, the memory stung like a fresh wound. How many of those visits had been about more than friendship? And what about the times he had questioned their closeness? Victor had asked Sophia once if she thought Darren was overstepping boundaries. "You're overthinking things," she had said dismissively, waving off his concerns like they were nothing. He had dropped it, not wanting to seem insecure or controlling. But now, he wished he had pressed harder and demanded answers. Maybe he could have stopped it before it spiraled out of control. The more he thought about it, the more the red flags piled up, and the angrier he became. At Sophia, at Darren, and himself for not seeing it sooner. As the hours dragged on, Victor felt a deep ache in his chest, not just from the betrayal, but from the realization that the life he thought he had was nothing more than a fragile illusion. The next day, Victor called Darren. His voice was calm, but the cold edge in his tone made his message clear. "We need to talk." Darren hesitated on the other end of the line as if he already knew why Victor was calling. After a long pause, he agreed. "All right. Where?" They met at a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of town, one of their usual hangout spots. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and the hum of quiet conversations filled the space. For a brief moment, Victor felt the weight of their years of friendship, memories of shared laughs, late-night talks, and support through life's challenges. But that weight quickly turned to anger as Darren walked in, looking sheepish and avoiding eye contact. Victor didn't bother with pleasantries. As soon as Darren sat down, Victor leaned forward, his voice low but laced with fury. "How could you?" he demanded, his hands clenched into fists on the table. "You were my best friend. I trusted you. You've been like a brother to me." Darren didn't meet his eyes. Instead, he stared at the table, his shoulders slumped. "I messed up, Vic," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "I swear it didn't mean anything. It was just a mistake." Victor let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. "A mistake? Twice?" he shot back, his voice rising slightly, causing a few heads to turn their way. "You don't just accidentally betray someone twice, Darren. You made a choice. Twice. And for what? A fling? You've destroyed everything. My marriage. Our friendship. Do you even understand what you've done?" Darren finally looked up, his eyes filled with regret. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've ruined everything. I wasn't thinking." "Don't give me that crap," Victor interrupted, slamming his palm on the table, causing the cups to rattle. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You had every opportunity to stop, but you didn't. And now I'm the one who has to live with the fallout." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Darren opened his mouth to say something but quickly closed it as if realizing that no apology could fix the damage. He looked like a man carrying the weight of his mistakes, but Victor didn't feel any sympathy. "I can't believe I called you my friend," Victor said quietly, his voice trembling with the effort to keep his emotions in check. "Stay out of my life. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't even think about showing up at my house." Victor stood abruptly, pushing his chair back with a scrape. He tossed a few bills on the table for his untouched coffee and turned to leave. Darren remained seated, staring at the table, his expression a mix of shame and defeat. As Victor walked away, he didn't look back. Each step felt heavy, but he knew it was the only way forward. 4 years, he had trusted Darren like family. Now, that trust was shattered, replaced by a bitter sense of betrayal. The friendship that had once been a cornerstone of his life was over, and there was no going back. The days that followed were a nightmare for Victor. He felt like he was trapped in a storm of emotions that wouldn't end. Anger burned in his chest every time he thought about Sophia and Darren. The heartbreak was like a heavy weight pressing on him, making it hard to even get out of bed. Then came the doubts that whispered in his mind. Was he not good enough for Sophia? Did he fail as a husband? Did she ever truly love him? Or was it all a lie? Every memory of Sophia felt ruined now. The way they used to laugh together didn't feel happy anymore. It felt fake. Every kiss, every hug, every moment they had shared felt like it didn't mean anything. He couldn't stop wondering if those memories were real or if she had been hiding this betrayal all along. Sometimes, Victor's anger made him want to lash out. He thought about exposing Sophia and Darren to the world. He could post the messages online for everyone to see, or tell all their friends what Darren had done. He wanted them to feel the same shame and pain he felt. But deep down, he knew this wouldn't help. It might hurt them, but it wouldn't take away his pain. It wouldn't fix what was broken. Feeling lost and unsure of what to do, Victor decided to see a therapist. At first, he wasn't sure it would help. For the first time, he could share everything he was feeling without being judged. The therapist didn't have all the answers, but she helped him see that the betrayal wasn't his fault. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. Sophia, too, begged Victor for forgiveness, offering to do anything to make things right. She started therapy on her own and wrote Victor a heartfelt letter. "I know I've broken your trust," the letter read. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know how sorry I am. I'm working on understanding why I made such terrible choices, and I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, if you'll let me." Victor read the letter over and over, Part of him wanted to believe her, to give their marriage another chance. But the other part, the one still raw with pain, wasn't sure he could. Victor decided to separate from Sophia temporarily. He moved into a small apartment to focus on himself and gain clarity. Therapy became a lifeline, helping him rebuild his sense of self-worth. After months of soul-searching, he decided to end their marriage. "I can't trust you again," he told her gently. "I loved you, but trust is the foundation of any relationship, and ours is broken." Sophia cried, but she didn't argue. She knew he was right.